Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for taking some time to listen to this very interesting conversation I'm about to have with a beloved colleague of mine who works with me in the Department of Communication Science at the University of South Africa. Her name is Therise Davie, and we're going to have a very interesting conversation around an article that she's contributing to this year's edition of the Communication Review newsletter. We are in our third year of publishing, so we are gearing up to publish issue number 3 of the Communication Review newsletter. I'll tell you a little bit about the newsletter and what the project is all about. And after that, we'll just formally introduce Therese to you so that you can get a clearer sense of who she is. And then I'll briefly let us into the conversation around the article she wrote. But mostly this conversation today is going to focus on other areas that Therese could not cover in this piece that she has contributed in issue number 3 of the Communication Review newsletter. And all of those insights are actually also linked to Therese's academic interests in line with her PhD studies that she will soon be embarking on. So we'll hear a bit more about all of that. But first, let me let you know a little bit about the Communication Review newsletter, what it's all about, and what you can look forward to in the newsletter. So our Communication Review newsletter is an online digital newsletter that launched its first edition in the year 2022. That's when we had our first issue launched. So the year 2024 will mark our third issue or the third edition of the newsletter. The Communication Review newsletter is basically an outcome of one of the several engaged scholarship initiatives, formerly known as community engagement initiatives at the University of South Africa within the Department of Communication Science. The newsletter generally is aimed at the community of communication scholars, researchers, academics, students, as well as thinkers and industry practitioners within the broad space of communication studies and communication practice. This is a collaborative and open project that embraces multiple voices. So we are really open to inviting contributors from anywhere and everywhere with different voices, right? And different opinions, different insights around communication or the communication field. We are really open to the idea of focusing on dynamic, diverse ideas instead of just focusing on conventional ideas about what it means to have worthy content, right? Publishable, worthy content with regard to communication or communications or communication practice, right? We do this because our communication review newsletter, we're really aiming it to be about forging a community in conversation or communities in conversation, right? Where we'd like to develop a multi-log. And this is a very interesting concept or interesting word, multi-log, that very aptly captures what the Communication Review newsletter aims to do, right? And I'm very grateful that I heard this word from two of our colleagues, Professors Mukudwana and Marx Knutze. So we are here to forge a multi-log via the Communication Review newsletter. We believe as a team working on the Communication Review newsletter that there is a need for collaboration and collaborative communities of communication researchers, communication students, intellectuals, professionals, and activists within our space beyond the boundaries of the university. And with this, we'd like to challenge the very many Euro-Western ideas of knowledge production or what it means to produce knowledge. So in today's conversation, I have here, like I said earlier, Therise Davie, and she is one of the authors that penned a contribution to be featured in the Communication Review newsletter, issue number 3, that is launching in September. We are very excited about the third issue launching in September, and I'm here with Therese to briefly discuss her contribution, just to give you a sense of what to look forward to. But I also want to get into a deeper conversation with her around other aspects that she was not able to cover because of limited space, right, in the article. Very briefly, Therese, before I allow you to also introduce yourself, just briefly about you. Therese Davie describes herself, or she actually is a lecturer in the field of decolonial communication. She also teaches in the field of advertising and communication campaigns. Therise holds qualifications from the University of Johannesburg and has also very recently obtained her master's qualification from the University of South Africa. So, massive congratulations to Therise on obtaining her master's. Therese's current research interests include technology as extensions of human faculties and consciousness, and how human interaction with artificial intelligence challenges current theories of communication. Therese, welcome to this conversation. Pardon me for the very long opening segment. I just had to quickly lay context to us. Very much, very warm welcome to you. And thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation. I did a brief introduction of who you are. Do you mind just telling us a bit more about who Therese is beyond the very brief profile that I just did right now?
Thank you, Simphiwe. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And thank you for also in this podcast sort of launch our wonderful magazine. And thank you for the opportunity to contribute in terms of writing and also to share some of my ideas in this podcast. So yes, like you have said, I am a multitude of teaching areas. As most of you have known, or people from different universities, we are developing a completely different new degree, a new BA in communication science. We are taking a more decolonial stance in terms of what we are offering. So I'm involved in developing and teaching decolonial communication. And as I've said, as we said, advertising and public relations and communication campaigns with a specific focus of new trends in terms of campaigning such as social media and so forth. And I also teach research methodology in social sciences. And yeah, did I answer your question? What exactly did you ask?
Oh, no, no, definitely. I just wanted a bit more meat in terms of who you are. And yeah, you've added such interesting insights. And even about the new degree, it's a very exciting degree. And you have actually had the honor of already teaching one of our first year modules, which is it Introduction to or Fundamentals of Decolonizing Media Studies?
Fundamental principles of decolonial communication.
Fundamental principles of decolonial conversation communication. Thank you so much for that very exciting module. That's actually the decolonial media studies or the decolonial communication aspect to the teaching that Therese does, which is part of what I said in her introduction. Thank you for that, Therese. Now, coming to the very interesting article that you have contributed in the Communication Review issue number 3, that is coming out, like I said earlier, in September of this year. We are very excited to launch here. So yours is one of the leading contributions or the leading articles, no pressure, the leading articles, the cover page articles of this year's issue of Communication Review. So quite a significant piece, quite a significant contribution coming from your side. And we are very grateful that you actually took the time to make this contribution. I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes, right, to just very briefly, if you allow me, Therese, to just let the readers know what to expect from that piece that you have contributed before the two of us get into a conversation about aspects that you'd have loved to cover, but you just didn't have the space to cover, right? So if you just allow me now to just give our listeners or our viewers actually just a little bit of insights to try and lure them into what to expect as they read your article. Feel free to mute yourself in the meantime while I do this. So Teresa's article in this issue of Communication Review is a very wholesome article. It starts off by offering what I really think is a very wholesome historical overview of the emergence and to a great extent also the evolution of artificial intelligence. So the reader in Teresa's piece especially in the first part, is introduced to some key figures in the AI field or in the artificial intelligence space. Key figures such as Alan Turing also. Alan Turing, of course, being one of the pioneers of modern computers, right? He was a brilliant mathematician. And might I add, as a queer scholar myself, he was also a person, a queer individual who already did such pioneering things. He's also known to have inspired what we now know in present day as the Turing test. This is one of the most discussed and the most, I guess, is one of the most widely known in the mathematics circles, in the computational circles, one of the most widely known methods for assessing artificial intelligence. So the Turing test, which dates back to the 1950s, essentially is a computer and human test. This is when a computer and a human are asked questions to determine which one is human between the two entities, right? So if the computer then is indistinguishable from the human that is participating in the Turing test, we then say that that computer or that machine has passed the Turing test. So that's just a brief history about Alan Turing, who's one of the figures featured in Therese's article. So you can look forward to learning a bit more about Alan Turing and the Turing test and how that works. But then the second half of Therese's article, what you can expect from that is an exploration by Therese, very lovely, insightful, in-depth exploration of AI in the African context. Therese partly touches on the potentialities of AI and potentially AI potentially thriving within our context as Africans, right, or as Africa. And of course, she speaks a bit about the limitations, some of the obstacles in the way right now of a potential thriving of artificial intelligence in our context, right, in the global south or in the African context specifically. And some of these limitations, Therese, that you highlight for us in the article, you speak about a limitation in the sense that people in Africa are not yet optimistic or optimistic enough about artificial intelligence. I think here is where you partly and briefly just mentioned that people across the continent are still a bit pessimistic about AI, right? Some probably things like AI is here to destroy the world, perhaps in many ways. You touch a bit about that, and that you introduce to us as one of the limitations of AI's potential flourishing in the African context. Then you secondly also speak about one of the other limitations or one of the other obstacles being the fact that the African context or Africa currently is not leading when it comes to research into artificial intelligence. You are saying that we are not yet at the forefront of the research into artificial intelligence, and that in many ways you show us in the article is still a limitation and is still an obstacle in the way of the potential thriving, right, and positive thriving of AI in the African context. Thirdly, you say Africa is basically not yet connected significantly or sufficiently connected, because you show in the article that while it is steadily rising, internet penetration in our context or the internet penetration rates still lag behind, you say, across several countries, right, on the continent in comparison to other continents and other contexts outside of Africa. And you see that may also be one of the limitations or obstacles in the way of AI flourishing and thriving within the African context. And then lastly, you speak about an economic point that you make, that startups, in terms of AI startups and so forth, are just too costly. So startup costs are just too high. So costs involved in starting huge computation facilities are just too exorbitant and too expensive right now in terms of where Africa is as one of those developing continents. So that may be one of the obstacles in our way when it comes to us actually seeing the thriving and the flourishing of AI in our context. I really hope I've captured some of the key things to look forward to from your piece. from your piece that you contributed, Therise. Is there anything you'd like to briefly add that you think readers can also be excited to look forward to about the piece before the two of us move into the deeper conversation I would like to have with you about other aspects of this whole idea that you've written on?
Wow, Simphiwe, thank you. That was a wonderful summary of the article. And the important thing that you have highlighted there is Alan Turing and the Turing test. As you have said, obviously at the forefront of communication research, and a brilliant mathematician from England. So yes, the Turing test definitely led the way in terms of we can't chat about ChatGPT. We can't talk about ChatGPT or any of those things before we talk about the Turing test. So yes, you've covered everything, and it's important that you have highlighted that aspect.
Well, I'm muted. Fabulous. Thank you so much, Therise. In that sense, then, I guess that's enough insights. I'm hoping our readers are excited about issue 3 and your piece. What I'm more excited about, Therise, though, is to get into this second portion of our conversation, or the meatier part of this conversation today. I would very much love for you to take the lead in this part of the conversation, because I know this is an area that you're passionate about. It's an area that you told me you're currently really considering strongly to focus on as you embark on your PhD studies, and all the best with that. So I'm just going to read out the general theme around this conversation, and I'd love for you, like I said, to take the lead in that sense. So today, we will be discussing with Therise, to what extent do we already contribute or attribute consciousness or sentience to the, what Therise calls, other side of the conversation. And I'm assuming, Therise, it's the conversation around AI, right? The conversation around 4IR and so forth. If not, what will make this happen, if anything? Because when I spoke to you about this conversation, Therise, you said that because you were so limited in terms of the piece that you wrote, you were limited in terms of word count, but there were some aspects that may be salient in the article, but you'd really like to just explore further and just verbalize a bit more, so that they also just, formulate and form in your brain as you think through ideas around your PhD. So you said you'd love for us to explore and discuss human interaction with AI, such as we are currently encountering in our daily lives, things like ChatGPT, things like WhatsApp's Llama. This is interesting. I have no idea what this is. I'm very interested to hear from you what WhatsApp's Llama is. You speak about Claude and Perplexity as well. So I'll just, at any point, whichever point of departure you'd like to start with, I give the floor to you. And you'll just lead me in terms of that conversation. And I'll just come through here and there, asking for some clarity wherever I'm a bit lost. So please take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simphiwe. Yes, I'm also very interested in the entertainment industry in terms of technology there that are used there, and people reacting emotionally to computer generated or technologically generated aspects. Like, for example, I'm doing an article on the ABBA Voyage concert at the moment, which is it's completely it's holograms and it's virtual, and like
Wow.
people's emotional reaction to that. But to get to the essence of what I want to talk to you about today is AI and consciousness. And can we, at what point, and can we ascribe consciousness and sentience to artificial intelligence, and where are we in that process? So just to give you an idea where I first came up with the idea, my supervisor introduced me to the Canadian philosopher and communication scholar Marshall McLuhan, and he was most famous for his ideas on the medium as a message and the global village. Sorry, just excuse me. But one of these notions that he always also brought forth was that of technology as extensions of man. He said that all technology is extension of some human faculty of man. And he described technology as any man-made object deeply embedded into human society. Just to give you an example, the shoe can be an extension of the foot, so can the motor vehicle, so can the airplane, and so can even a spaceship be an extension of the foot. For example, your hand, a spear can be an extension of your hand, so can a pen, and so can your keyboard be an extension of your hand. So all technology he explains technology as extensions of all human faculties. Now, are we taking McLuhan a little bit further? I don't think McLuhan went as far as thinking about or even imagining at that stage that our technology will be able to possibly extend consciousness. And that is basically where the idea germinated, if you want. And I took it from there. And I wanted to know, have we now reached the extreme extension? Are we now starting to develop technology that is conscient or sentience? And I'm not sure, it's a difficult question. The questions I want to ask is, firstly, have we or are we creating communication or technology that is sentient or consciousness? And are we perceiving these technologies as sentient or consciousness? So that's basically two questions. And my hypothesis would be yes. But if we prove that that's not the case, that's also interesting. But I would say the answer to both of those questions would be yes. Just a little personal anecdote. My first real emotional interaction with a robotic entity was when we recently visited China. We stayed in several hotels, and many of you who may listen to this would be familiar with this, but a little white robot about 1 meter high, with a round head and a square body, would come to deliver your room service for you. You could even order takeaways and it would come to deliver it to your door. And it would very politely ask you to move out of the way if you wanted to pass you. And the very interesting thing about this little being was that it spoke in the voice of about a 7-year-old boy. So the 7-year-old boy, see, I'm already referring to this as something that is
the human. Yes.
This little, it spoke in the voice of a 7-year-old boy. So, and can you imagine yourself being rude to a 7-year-old boy? And I'm sure the answer is no. We always said "shay shay," which is Cantonese for thank you, to the little robot. So yeah, that is just an example of my first example of an interaction with emotional interaction with a robotic thing. And as you've said, before we can even start, and I think this is the third time we have now, you're welcome to interrupt me whenever you feel you need to, but
careful what you wish for. But no, thank you. Noted, thanks.
I think this is now the third time we are mentioning this, and that is the Turing test, and that, as you have explained, you as a person are communicating with a computer, and you are communicating with a person. And if one says that you cannot tell the difference which one is a computer and which one is a human, then you have to ascribe sentience or consciousness to the entity that you are testing. So the idea of when would we be forced to consider a machine as conscious, and we cannot say if it's made of metal, it cannot be conscious. Okay, so that was just to emphasize the conversation that one would have with such an entity.
And I wonder also, Therise, while you go through your notes, right? Sorry to cut you there. So in terms of us attributing, right, consciousness or sentience to a robotic entity and making those sort of emotional connections, right, to this what is practically and objectively aluminium or steel or whatever, but us attributing some sort of emotional connection to them, what do you think psychologically then that does in terms of us as humans, psychologically or psychosocially then? What are we doing? Are we playing in human normality in terms of psychology? Are we still gonna be regarded as normal when it comes to psychology? And I'm very, very careful because we've heard of people that actually marry robotic entities or marry objects. And I don't know if psychologically, if we regard them as fully psychologically, and I hate the word normal, but so if we get to a world where we do attribute such consciousness to robotic entities, for instance, and we make such deep emotional connections to them, are we moving into a psychological space of a different kind of normality, a different kind of humanity that sees nothing wrong with interacting with humans in that way? And no one can look down on me, no one can judge me for making such deep emotional connections with a robotic entity like aluminium, steel, object.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions there, just to say, no one really knows what the future holds in terms of robotics. The sky is the limit in terms of what's going to happen. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But in terms of the word you would like to avoid in terms of normality, that's also an open question. But I would say yes, you would remain normal. Like my silly example with the 7-year-old boy, was I not normal? I was
You're
completely
perfectly, yes.
I was completely normal in my
Yes.
interaction with that. I'll speak about ChatGPT and all those things, but I think that what this type of communication messes with, if you will, a little bit, is our current understanding in terms of models of communication, in terms of sender, receiver, message, noise, feedback, all those conventional, traditional things. We are going to challenge those things. I don't know if I'm answering your question in terms of.
No, definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
I was trying to come from a very layperson point of view to say that if someone just randomly runs into me having a conversation with a robot and making proper emotional connection with that robot, just a layperson, outside person with very limited ideas about artificial intelligence, I'm just thinking of how then do they observe me in their very layperson mind? Do they observe me as, oh, okay, this is interesting? Like, oh, wow, that's different. That's so new to me. So I was just trying to come from a bit of a layperson's perspective in terms of, I wonder psychosocially what it means as
Yeah,
we
and
develop further and further into making these connections with artificial intelligence.
what I wanted to mention it later in the discussion, but a journalist for the New York Times, you can now befriend chatbots. And in his experiment, he befriended 18 different types of chatbots, and he had these friends for I don't know how long. And this very sophisticated New York Times journalist admitted as he felt sad after having to end his his friendship with these artificial intelligent chatbots. So yes, that's also an indication of that but we can remain normal in that sense.
Yeah, thank you.
So in terms of okay, so we can now say that ChatGPT that's on all of our desks at the moment already passed the Turing test, and that is where we are now. In terms of platforms, like you mentioned, WhatsApp's Llama. I'm really enjoying WhatsApp's Llama at the moment.
I can't believe I have no idea what llama is.
If you just go to WhatsApp and you will see there's a meta icon, and then you click on the meta icon, and then you can type any. Do you see the meta? It's right up top.
Meta. Oh, ask Meta AI. Oh my goodness. I never asked. Oh, up there.
Yeah, now you can ask it anything.
Oh my goodness. So the
and
name
the
is
nice
Llama.
thing is, yeah, the background is used Llama. Okay, so.
Oh, okay. I'm asking about Alan Turing now. What is Alan Turing's legacy? Alan Turing. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Wow.
Okay, so the
I can't
nice thing
believe
is
I didn't know a new technological thing.
so
Wow.
you
Thank you.
don't
Thank you for that.
you don't have to leave your couch if you quickly want to know something. And in terms of its reactions, just before the session, I quickly played around, just had a little bit of fun with Dharma. I asked bizarre question. What has the most calories? Half a chocolate cake or a full slab of chocolate? And it responded with, well, that's a delicious question. And then it gave me an answer. And I asked, I obviously had chocolate on my mind. I asked, my dog just ate a full slab of dark chocolate. What should I do? And it responded with, oh, that's an emergency. This is what you should do. And I asked, I'm experiencing lower back pain. What can the cause of that be? And it said, oh, I'm so sorry that you are experiencing lower back pain. This and this is what you can do. So it gives you a little bit of an emotional response before it gives you the factual information that you want.
Yeah.
So yes.
Fascinating.
In terms of our conversation, in terms of our conversations with ChatGPT, I opted for the $20 option of the ChatGPT Plus, and just to have access to DALL-E and to have access to the recent what we expect the ChatGPT voice enabled platform where we'll be able to talk to ChatGPT and ChatGPT talks back to you. So there are very interesting possibilities in terms of that. Can you, for example, imagine before you are in high school and you haven't studied for the exam and you're starting to study the day before, and you have GPT chat assist to help you memorize questions or to stay up with you throughout the night and chat with you about the work you are studying. That would be wonderful. And so if I understand correctly, this will be available to us in a few months. So and I'm sure that
wow.
Yeah. So and I think we would that would give it even more sentience or more conscious feel to it. And in terms of DALL-E, which is the program that we can use to generate images, you can literally ask DALL-E to generate any kind of images for you in any style, and it will do that. You will also find in my article that some of the images I included there I created with DALL-E. And the question I asked, one of the questions I asked to start with was, do we see this as emotionally intelligent? And have we created something that is emotionally intelligent? So my question now is, do we interact with this as emotionally intelligent? So what's interesting is how different people interact with the specific technologies. The only person I can really compare it with is me and my husband. If I ask, I'm much, my husband is kinder than me, I think. I would ask DALL-E, create an image of a woman in a field holding a flower, and then it would do what? My husband would ask, can you, and he would also find this with ChatGPT, if you say please, it would respond back with certainly. If you don't say please, it does not say certainly.
Wow.
And my husband would, in terms of DALL-E, my husband would say, okay, thanks, that's a great image. But can you perhaps make the background a bit more, a bit lighter? And then it would respond kinder. So are we interacting with these technologies as if it is sentient? So what I explained to you now maybe also further answers the question. What's also interesting is I have compared, what also happens is sometimes these AI platforms does not know. Llama, I found Llama also came up with something that was not true. And
so we can say in those instances, that's where Llama fails the Turing test, or that's where these technologies fail the Turing test. Can we say that then in those instances where they get it wrong? Do we see that as a failing a Turing test? Or am I missing the point?
What they call it is hallucinate. That it is
okay.
hallucinating.
Okay.
I compared ChatGPT and Perplexity, and I don't know if you know about Microsoft's Copilot.
I've seen the name Copilot. I don't think I've directly engaged yet.
Okay, so I've compared those three. What's nice about Copilot and Perplexity is that it gives you sources, and that is something that ChatGPT does not normally do, but you can ask ChatGPT to give you sources. And then Copilot would give you the sources and give you a link to those sources. But if you ask ChatGPT to give you sources, he makes up sources. he thinks. See, I'm already referring to him as he. I've already
I pick up on those nuances, yes, that in your mind, in many
decided
ways.
that he's a man.
Exactly.
So
You've been humanizing and conscientizing them quite interestingly in the nuanced little words that you use. That's very interesting.
Okay, and just one last thing, I suppose, is we've been asking the question in terms of dolls, for example. Why do they not, or did they not have created? They have so much technology available. Having a doll available for a kid that can that the kid can talk to and talk to about his day and debrief a little bit and ask a few questions and so on.
Yeah.
And we wondered why that's not available. And I did a little bit of research, and in 2015, Mattel released Hello Barbie, and that was not so successful. Sorry about that. That was not so. That was not so successful. It was not really at that stage. We weren't so advanced in terms of this, but it had 7,000 pre-recorded words, but it could record and it could remember. And security and privacy issues became prevalent, and they had to discontinue that. So that was just an interesting little bit of information I wanted to share with you.
Like some of the work has been done to come up with maybe that idea of the doll, perhaps. So people are doing the work. So Teresa, I can foresee us actually having maybe many trial runs of different kinds of technologies as we move into a world that I personally am aligning with your hypothesis, as we move further into a world where we are going to afford or assign much deeper consciousness or sentience to these technologies.
Yeah. Anyone who is interested in this specific topic should definitely watch the movie Her. Simphiwe,
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of that film.
I haven't. I just know the artist Her. I'll look for the movie Her.
Yeah, that is about a guy who had a real relationship with AI. In terms of the future, um, I know you can date the chatbot, but that also has problems at the moment. In terms of the future, like I said, when Meta finally makes when ChatGPT brings the voice assist available, that would be a great thing. They already developed a pendant that you can wear around your neck that records everything he says and records all your conversations and sends you text messages as to what to do. It gives you directions in terms of where you should go. This is where, pretty much like your phone, but
Yeah.
it listens to everything you say and then it responds on that, and it's very nice looking little pendant. I can see all
Sure.
of us walking around very soon with our little pendants around our necks. Sounds so futuristic, something out of a different
Yeah.
world. But anyway, um, and so the sky is the limit in terms of what
Definitely.
what what's ahead of us. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in Japan they can already graft human skin and place that onto metal and make
Sure.
robots look like real with real skin. So yeah, the technology is moving fast, and yeah, are artificial technology going to take us over? And I don't know, all these interesting things we hear in movies or saw about in movies are now coming to
Yes.
reality. There's some people. I think I've taken up all my time. I hope I made sense, and I hope yeah,
Oh no.
the listener could take something from this discussion.
Oh, definitely, Therese. Don't even worry about the time. I also just allowed our conversation to just run on over the time, and I really absolutely enjoyed that. There were so many insights that you brought to this conversation, even for myself, someone who hasn't allowed myself the time to, fully and closely explore the idea of AI, right? Because in my world, it's still something where I'm like, okay, I don't have time yet to get myself involved in that. But this conversation has really inspired and stirred something in me to actually go find out more. Because as you're speaking about some of these futuristic and potential things that may emerge from AI, right? And out of the AI environment, my mind already goes to like, oh my God, can you imagine in the African context, like in the Afro spiritual context, where I can go have a spiritual consultation with a traditional healer via AI or something of that sort, like an AI-based traditional healer for people
Yeah,
that believe in that, and then they have consultations, AI consultations. without actually
Yeah,
seeing
absolutely,
an
yes.
actual sangoma, an actual traditional healer, or like fascinating the kinds of things that could come out, even for our context here in Africa. So I absolutely, truly appreciated your time in this conversation. Really excited, also really excited for our readers to read your article and to also be inspired to try and look at other avenues into this conversation. Also, very much excited for you, Therise, as you explore this for your forthcoming PhD studies. Really want to wish you well on that PhD study as well. And I can definitely tell you that you're going to give us insights about the future that will really go a long way in terms of where we are at with AI. I don't know now at this point if you have some closing remarks, anything you'd like to add, alert us to, say to our communication review viewers. Just have yourself 60 seconds and close us
Uh,
off if you'd like.
I basically covered everything I would like to say. I would just like to thank you for this lovely interview. And yes, I'm really thrilled about this edition, and I think it would really be interesting for the reader,
Yeah.
especially now that we are in the fourth industrial revolution. Like I've mentioned in my article, that this came upon us so quickly. Last year in 2003, I said you may have been forgiven for not even knowing what 4IR is short for. But we are in the fourth industrial revolution now, and I think
Mm,
this article will definitely, this edition will definitely um, include great explorations on
mm,
that matter. Um, yes, thank you for the opportunity, and I hope um, I delivered what you expected, and thank you
Almost
for the well wishes.
most certainly you delivered through and through and even above and beyond. I also want to take this opportunity to thank you, Therise, for your time. We had our little issues with technology, ironically, before we could have this conversation. But I'm glad we managed to sort those out. And I'm really excited to see this conversation go out on the interwebs and take a life of its own. And I'm also very excited to see our issue 3 launching. We're launching it in Cape Town, actually, in the month of September. Very excited about that. Very excited to see the final version of your cover page leading article in issue 3 of Communication Review from the Department of Communication Science at UNISA. Thank you so much to our viewers and our Communication Review readers for also taking time to view or listen to this episode. We really appreciate you. I'll see you in the next conversation with another author that has penned an interesting article and contributed that to the Communication Review newsletter, issue 3, 2024. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.